Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Welcome back to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. As always, thanks for taking the time to listen. It is mid-December in the United States, and in my world, that can bring a lot of craziness and stress and anxiety and end-of-year business stuff and family tension with the holidays and consumerism and all of these things. And it's been coming up for me, and so I thought I would share with you what I have learned about how to manage that heightened stress or tension in my life, so I can really be present and happy and connected and of service still, even in the madness. So that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm excited to share with you what's coming up for me. And before I do, I just want to make sure that you know that all these resources are always over on the show notes for you at sagebhobbs.com. And also with the holidays coming up, if you're in the West and you celebrate these holidays, I just want to mention my book because last year my book made an amazing gift for lots of people and I received great feedback that it was just a fun, lovely, helpful, uplifting gift that people gave to friends and family around how to really communicate more effectively and have better relationships. So everybody wants better relationships, and gosh, does that show up this time of year. So it's called Naked Communication. Most of you know that already, but if you haven't grabbed a copy, you can do that on Amazon or over on my website, and I'll put a link in the show notes. So without further ado, let's dive into how we can relax when things feel crazy. So like I said, I often will do these solo shows around things that are coming up for me, because if they're coming up for me and my clients and my friends, then I know that they're coming up for some of you. And I am one of these people who kind of hates the word busy. You may have heard me talk about this before. I just feel like it's overused and that it's used as a way for women in particular in our society to measure their value. Like if we're not super busy and up to a million different things and overwhelmed and exhausted, then our life really isn't valuable or doesn't have meaning. And I know that that is just a story that I have, but I have often really felt that busy language makes us all not feel great about ourselves, and it heightens our stress and our anxiety and our worry. So I really don't use that word lightly. And I will say that December every year feels really busy for me and it feels full. And it feels full with family obligations around the holidays. It feels full with my kids' school functions. It feels full with buying presents, managing, in our case, we have 4 sets of grandparents, managing who's going to give what to whom, the teacher presents, and, end of a quarter, end of year business goals, client work, working that in around people's holidays and vacations. It just feels like this full time of year, and the days are darker where I live and it's colder. And so as you kind of just want to hibernate and hunker down, all of these different needs start bubbling up and require more time and attention and energy, and it can feel stressful. So I want to talk about that today because I've been really, really aiming to manage that in my own life this month and with the women I support in my work. And so I figured I would share what it is I've been learning. So, okay, here's how I've been dealing with it, and here's how I try to still be creating great content for you, working with the people in my life, working with my clients, supporting my loved ones, actually managing new opportunities that have been percolating up as well, and really wanting to kind of be present and happy and enjoy this season. The very first thing when I sat down to consider this, like, okay, Sage, what are you doing to take care of yourself right now? And how can you help other people with this as well? Busy, smart, ambitious women, is permission. Permission is the first thing that I'm going to talk about, which is just the permission to take some time to myself, to say no, to set limits, to sit down, literally to sit down. Like I'm watching people buzzing around so frenetically in desperation to get everything done that we're not like just pausing to be for a moment, to let things get messy. That's a big one for me. So my house gets messier and I just have to ride some of that if I want to also take the time to wrap presents and to light Hanukkah candles and to put up the Christmas tree, because we do both in my house, right? Just letting things be a little messier than I would usually like. Permission to get more takeout, to not cook as much or as fancifully, right? I just find that when I can give myself permission, it's huge. It's just huge. Like I can exhale the way I just did of it's okay. It's okay to let these things go. This is what I'm choosing. This is what I'm not choosing. So where can you give yourself more permission to loosen the reins? Where can you give yourself more permission to say no to certain requests or things that feel like obligations? Where can you give yourself permission to set some limits or boundaries with your time? Where can you give yourself just more permission, more grace? That's the first. And the second is making some space for quiet. And if you're like me, that can be hard. I have 2 little kids, 8 and 4, a husband, family, friends. My mom and sister live in town. I work often from my home. How can I find space for quiet and reflection in all of the busyness, in all of the heightened stress of the season, the end of the year, right? How can I actually take a moment to pause? And I think that goes back to permission, which is just to allow yourself that space for quiet and reflection. And it's so critical because A, it allows some of the noise to clear out so that B, you can really start to prioritize. And that's my third thing about how I'm keeping my sanity in this time of year and not driving everybody around me crazy and finishing out strong with my clients and creating new things for the year to come is to prioritize. What is most important to me. Is it, certain family things that I have on the calendar? Is it the holiday cards, which I can tell you it's not because I don't think I'm making them this year. Huge permission around that. First time ever. Is it scheduling out the podcast through the year? Is it creating the new group coaching program? Is it doing some contracting work with some cool organizations? What are my priorities right now when I have less time, more commitments, and I really want to be present for the holiday season with my loved ones and my friends and family and attend the caroling party and the Hanukkah party and the dinners, right? What are my priorities? It's much easier to tune into that when you've made some space for quiet and reflection and you've given yourself permission to do so. So you can see these kind of all build on each other and weave together. The first is permission, the second is making some space, and the third is prioritizing. So the fourth one, I love this one, and I try and teach this to my kids as well if you have children, and my husband and I try and practice this, and it's not always easy. None of these are, but these are all, if we have the intention of them, these can all be really, really supportive to our well-being and our calm and our peace and quiet and our state of mind, right? So the fourth one is perspective. And that means just not having tunnel vision. Like it's so easy to get caught up in our own pretty small little worlds of what needs to get done and what to-do list and the groceries and the tasks at work and some more of like the minutia or the routines that we're used to. And I really find that this time of year, particularly with holidays and cold, it's cold where I live, getting there finally, actually. It's been really warm, but it's getting cold in December here. We can get kind of insular. And I really feel like it's a time where I want to be more present and aware of my gratitude and my place in the world. And perspective piece for me is just not staying so small in my own life that I can't see what's going on in the bigger world and have perspective that my life is really just one small part in a big, complex, interwoven system. And not to get too philosophical about it, and everybody has different beliefs, but it really, really reminds me of how grateful I am for the life that I get to lead. It reminds me of what's really important. It reminds me to be generous. It reminds me to savor the small joys in my life when I have perspective. So that doesn't mean I get swallowed by the rabbit hole of the news or political commentary or things that really can stress me out enormously, but I am paying attention enough that I really know what's going on in my community and my world enough to give me perspective on, okay, Sage, these things that are causing you stress are really relative and they're just the world, and your experience in the world is bigger than that. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. My experience in the world, my part in the world really lands for me when I'm paying attention to the broader community and I have perspective. So that's the fourth one, which builds into the fifth one, my final one for today's conversation. And of course, there's so many more, and I'd love to hear from you. If you have some, please hit me up on Facebook, Sage B. Hobbs over on Facebook, and let me know, like, what do you do to manage this time of year and to manage that heightened level of work and personal responsibilities during the holiday season, right? But my fifth one is gratitude. And gratitude's something I try to practice all the time in my life, and I've done a show on it. I will link to that in the show notes at sagebhobbs.com. But this time of year in particular, where I can feel my own energy getting more frenetic and my stress level rising and my degree of being pulled in various directions is more intense than usual, all of that is so mitigated, and I feel so much more nourished and supported when I am paying attention to what I'm grateful for. So, for example, like the consumerism of this time of year here in the States really can stress me out. And in my world, what that looks like is my children have 4 sets of grandparents, and they're so lucky and they're so loved. And the grandparents are super generous, and I want to be really gracious to their generosity, but they send a lot of stuff, and my kids love it, of course. And I get extra stressed in how do I teach them to appreciate what they have and to show thanks and give thanks as things come their way? How do I let them enjoy the beautiful abundance that they get to have while also really understanding that that is not the case for everyone, you know? And so I get stressed about it. And I want to focus on our good fortune, and I want to focus on being grateful for all that we get to experience and have in our lives. And there are ways in which we give back. We could participate in various things locally and share a gift and giving things away all the time. Actually, I have my kids do that. But if I can really pay attention to, wow, oh my gosh, like in this moment, for example, my furnace just kicked on, and I am so grateful to be warm in my house while I'm looking at snow, one of our first snowfalls out the window. And if I can really shine a light on all that is well and working in my life and not on the things that are causing me stress or giving me anxiety or fear or worry or concern, it's not to turn away from things that need my attention or suffering, not at all. That's part of the perspective, right? But if I can shine my attention on what I'm really grateful for, immediately I can feel my own stress levels go down, right? And I can take a breath. And breathing, I mean, not to get too woo-woo, but breathing is like super underrated sometimes. Like when I really can pause and take a breath in those spaces of quiet, in those moments of reflection, if I can actually breathe and fill my body with oxygen and air, I immediately can also feel my stress levels subside. So I love this conversation with all of you. I love being a part of the Naked Conversations community with each of you and really, really giving you tools and ways to show up more fully and more nakedly and more real as yourself in the world, because I am 1000% convinced more than ever before that women's voices are needed on the planet in a huge way, that they need to be amplified, that we need to have the courage to speak up, to share our stories, to connect with each other, to support one another, to share our ideas and our leadership. 100,000% in on that. That's what this is all about. And what I'm also aware of is that many cultures still expect women to hold down the fort at home, to be really leading the way with all of this holiday stuff, with all of this seasonal stuff, with responsibilities for their children and the parties and the gifts and all of that. And I know that in order for you to shine most fully, most powerfully out in the world, you also need to mitigate your own stress, particularly this time of year, so that we can really show up and continue to show up and lead. So I hope these 5 things were helpful to you. I'm still figuring this out right along with you. I am not over here like oming my way to total December bliss. I'm in it with you. I'm struggling with you. And I am also deeply happy and grateful for many, many things in my life. And I feel like that is a paradox I can live with, right? The big stress that comes up at the season with the deep, deep joy and gratitude that it can share. So thanks for listening. Love doing this with you. I'll see you next week. And please head over to the show notes, grab a book. If you haven't grabbed one already, share it with people you love. It's an awesome gift. And I can't wait to connect with you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhabs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication, Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. And lastly, keep the conversation going with us over in the Facebook community, sagebhabs.com/Facebook, where we can keep talking about these super important and powerful topics of living a life fully expressed. Thanks again. See you next time.